The Essex Regiment was a line infantry regiment of the British Army in existence from 1881 to 1958, and served in many conflicts such as the Second Boer War and both World War I and World War II, serving with distinction in all three. The regiment was formed in 1881 under the Childers reforms by the amalgamation of the 44th Regiment of Foot and the 56th Regiment of Foot. In 1958 the regiment was amalgamated with the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment to form the 3rd East Anglian Regiment. However, the existence was short-lived and, in 1964, was amalgamated again with the 1st East Anglian Regiment, the 2nd East Anglian Regiment and the Royal Leicestershire Regiment to form the Royal Anglian Regiment. The lineage of the Essex Regiment is continued by C Company of the 1st Battalion, Royal Anglian Regiment. Origins. The Essex Regiment was formed in 1881 by the union of the 44th and 56th Regiments of Foot, which became the 1st and 2nd Battalions respectively of the new regiment. This merger was part of the Childers reforms of the British Army, which also saw the East and West Essex Regiments of Militia joining the Essex Regiment as its 3rd and 4th Battalions. A large number of small rifle volunteer corps had been formed in the county as a result of an invasion scare in 1859. In 1880 they were consolidated into 4 battalions, and in 1883 they were designated as the 1st 4th Volunteer Battalions of the Essex Regiment. Under the mobilization scheme proposed by the Stanhope Memorandum of 1888, they constituted the Essex Volunteer Infantry Brigade, which was to gather at Whalley in case of invasion. For the history of the regiment's regular army components prior to 1881, see 44th Regiment of Foot, 56th Regiment of Foot. Second Anglo-Boer War. The 1st and 2nd Battalions both served in South Africa during the Second Anglo-Boer War. Notably, the regiment participated in the relief of Kimberley and the Battle of Paardeberg. The 4 volunteer battalions contributed 2 special service companies to assist 1st Battalion and were also awarded the Battle Honour South Africa, 1900-02. The Haldane Reforms. As a result of the Haldane Reforms, the regiment's militia component, which was renamed the Special Reserve, was reduced to 1 battalion on 1 April 1908. In addition, the 4 volunteer battalions transferred to the Territorial Force and were redesignated as battalions of the Essex Regiment. 1st Volunteer Battalion became the 4th Battalion at Brentwood. 2nd Volunteer Battalion became the 5th Battalion at Colchester. 3rd Volunteer Battalion became the 6th Battalion at West Ham. 4th Volunteer Battalion became the 7th Battalion at Walthamstow. The Essex Brigade joined the East Anglian Division of the TF. In 1910, the Essex and Suffolk Cyclist Battalion, which had been raised in 1908, divided to become the 6th Battalion, Suffolk Regiment, and the 8th Battalion, Essex Regiment. First World War. During the First World War, the Essex Regiment provided 30 infantry battalions to the British Army. The 3rd Battalion was mobilized to supply drafts to the 2 regular battalions. On the outbreak of war, the territorial battalions all formed 2nd Line and eventually 3rd Line battalions. 3 service battalions and 1 reserve battalion were formed from volunteers in 1914 as part of Kitchener's army. A further service battalion was raised by the Mayor and Borough of West Ham. Reserve battalions were created as the war progressed, including the 14th, the 15th, 16th and 17th, the 18th and 1st and 2nd Garrison battalions. The regiment's battle honours for the First World War include Le Cateau, Ypres, Loos, Somme, Cambrai, Gallipoli and Gaza. Battle of the Somme. The 1st Battalion took part in the first day of the Battle of the Somme on 1 July 1916. The battalion, which comprised W, X, Y, and Z companies, took up position in the British trenches at 3:30 am. At 8:40 am, the battalion received orders to advance and clear the German first-line trench. It was delayed by heavy enemy fire and congestion in the communication trench. The Newfoundland Regiment, advancing to the left of the Essex Battalion, was almost entirely wiped out as it advanced towards the German lines. At 10:50 am, the Essex companies were in position and received orders to go over the top. The companies came under heavy artillery and machine gun fire almost as soon as they appeared over the parapet, causing heavy losses. The attack became bogged down in no man's land. The battalion received orders from 88th Brigade headquarters to recommence the attack at 12:30 p.m. But at 12:20 p.m. the battalion commander advised Brigade HQ that, owing to casualties and disorganization, it was impossible to renew the attack. The survivors of the battalion received orders to hold their position along the line of Mary Redden, New Trench, Regent Street, Thiepval Memorial. The names of 949 members of the Essex Regiment are recorded on the Thiepval Memorial, commemorating the officers and men of the regiment who died on the Somme and have no known grave. Gallipoli. After serving in home defense, the Essex Brigade in 54th Division landed at Suvla Bay in August 1915 in an attempt to restart the stalled Gallipoli campaign. The 4 Essex battalions saw some hard fighting, but lost even more men to sickness. They were withdrawn to Egypt in December before the Gallipoli Peninsula was finally abandoned. Senussi campaign. As soon as it arrived in Egypt, the brigade became involved in the Senussi campaign, marching out to replace the New Zealand Rifle Brigade guarding the coast railway from Alexandria to Daaba. The Essex battalions were relieved from this duty on 4 March 1916 by the 2nd County of London Yeomanry and moved into the No. 1 section of the Suez Canal defences. In August, part of the brigade was moved northwards to counter a Turkish thrust at the canal, and was present at the Battle of Romani, though only 161st Brigade Machine Gun Company was engaged. Sinai and Palestine. In early 1917, 161st Brigade crossed the Sinai Desert to take part in the Palestine campaign. It was engaged at all 3 Battle of Gaza. At the first battle, the main attack was made by 53rd Division with 161st Brigade in support. Towards the end of the day, the 161st Brigade was ordered to take Green Hill. Despite heavy fighting, the attack was a complete success and the brigade held the whole position by nightfall. However, confusion set in, and 53rd Division withdrew during the night. The men of 161st Brigade were enraged by the order to withdraw. The following day, patrols showed that the Turks had not reoccupied the position. 7th Battalion was sent up to support the patrols, but a violent Turkish counter-attack finished the battle. Casualties were heavy, including many men missing after the fighting withdrawal. The brigade was not heavily engaged during the Second Battle of Gaza. 7th BN was detached and assigned to the Imperial Camel Corps, which was protecting the left flank of 54th Division, while the rest of the brigade was in divisional reserve and most of its casualties were due to shellfire. During the summer months, 161st Brigade held the line without suffering serious casualties, and by the end of October was fully up to strength for the forthcoming Third Battle of Gaza. On the morning of the 2nd of November, the 54th Division put in a holding attack at the El Arish redoubt. The fighting was confused, but the division took all its objectives. However, the 17th BN found that the 4th objective, John Trench, was a mere scrape in the ground and could not be held. The brigade commander considered that this battalion had the hardest time of all the day. At 4 o'clock on the 3rd of November, 17th made a renewed attempt to take their objective, but were again held up by Turkish machine gun fire, with heavy casualties. During the rapid pursuit after the fall of Gaza, 1/4th and 1/6th Essex assisted the Anzac Mounted Division, while 1/5th and 1/7th were left marching in the rear, as well as battle casualties. The whole brigade suffered considerably from influenza during November to December 1917 and throughout 1918. The weakened brigade was mainly engaged in line holding until September 1918. 54th Division was held in readiness to move to reinforce the Western Front, but in the end was not sent. The 54th Division returned to the offensive for the Battle of Megiddo, which finally broke the Turkish resistance. To support the breakthrough, 161st Brigade was to secure the Es-Zakkur line and then form a defensive flank. The brigade formed up before dawn on the 19th of September, covered by an overhead barrage from the machine gun companies. It took its objectives successfully. The main assault completely broke through the Turkish lines and opened the way for the cavalry to pursue the defeated enemy. 161st Brigade was left behind for a week on battlefield clearance before joining the pursuit. By the time the armistice with Turkey was signed on the 30th of October 1918, 54th Division had reached Beirut. Home defense. The four second-line TF battalions constituted the 206th Brigade in 69th Division, which remained on home defense throughout the war. The third-line battalions were formed as reserve battalions to provide drafts to the TF units overseas. By September 1916, they had been merged into 4th Reserve Battalion. Irish War of Independence. The 1st Battalion was stationed in Kinsale in County Cork during the Irish War of Independence. Major Percival. From 1920, Major Arthur Ernest Percival served first as a company commander, then as the battalion's intelligence officer. Percival later volunteered to serve with the Royal Irish Constabulary during the Irish Republican Army campaign for Irish independence. Through him, large numbers of Essex Regiment veterans joined the RIC. Percival's First World War experience quickly got him seconded toward intelligence, counterintelligence and counterinsurgency operations. As such, he and his fellow Essex regimental colleagues were trained in counterinsurgency tactics, combining both intelligence and rapid response teams in mobile squads. Percival and his Essex veterans staged numerous operations to break the back of the IRA. Consequently, he and his fellow Essex men were regarded by the Loyalists as an efficient counter-terrorist force. This opinion of their effectiveness appears to have been seconded by the Republicans, who came to regard Percival and the Essex men as one of its primary foes. As the IRA guerrilla war intensified and IRA assassinations were met with death squads, a large bounty was placed on Percival's and the Essex men's death. The IRA eventually increased its bounty on Percival to £1,000, a significant sum of money for the period. Although numerous Essex men were assassinated by the IRA, all attempts to assassinate Percival failed. In July 1920, the Essex Regiment captured Tom Hales, commander of the IRA's 3rd Cork Brigade, and Patrick Hart, quartermaster of the West Cork Brigade. Both men were severely beaten during interrogation. Hart was subsequently sent to Broadmoor. crossbarry. As a result of the intelligence gained by captured IRA leaders, such as Hart and Hales, headquarters at Dublin Castle took over command of the Cork area of operations from Percival, hoping to use a combined British Army and RIC force to smash the IRA. The castle's general goal was to use a series of interlocking regular military positions to encircle the area and then using reinforced RIC patrols to search and flush the IRA out from within its community. In March 1921, at Crossbarry in County Cork, the Essex Regiment encircled the IRA's West Cork flying column with 1,200 troops and soon managed to expose a company-sized element of the IRA. The IRA flying column, under the command of Tom Barry, numbered 104 volunteers. However, rather than attempting to immediately destroy this IRA element, which had been met in contact, Percival, the RIC and the Essex Regiment were ordered to link with the larger regular forces in an attempt to encircle the IRA force. However, the delay in tempo needed to carry out this move and a lack of communications between the RIC mobile teams and the regulars resulted in the pressure being taken off Barry's IRA men. This allowed the IRA force to attack and overwhelm a number of isolated army positions, which appeared to create an opening out of the encirclement. Foreseeing a breakout, Percival ordered his Essex and RIC mobile teams to regroup and lay an ambush outside the opening. Simultaneously, the larger regular force misunderstood Percival's objective and thought it saw an opportunity to destroy the entire IRA force in Cork. Consequently, it abandoned most of its encircling positions and regrouped the regulars for a single large attack on the ambush site. Meanwhile, believing his column had little chance of escaping, Barry ordered his IRA men to break out in small groups as best they could through the encirclement. Thus, in a stroke of luck, most of Barry's IRA column simply passed through the abandoned encircling army posts. A small IRA detachment did attempt to break out through the British ambush site. However, as the RIC and Essex group were about to spring their ambush, an Irish regular force racing to the ambush site ran into the IRA detachment and was quickly engaged. In the resulting firefight, the IRA detachment disrupted the British Army column and then melted away. In total, the British Army stationed 12,500 troops in County Cork during the conflict, while Barry's men numbered no more than 110 soldiers and a few hundred supporters, suppliers, and armourers. The British Army failed to subdue the IRA flying column, and Barry's tactics made West Cork ungovernable for the British. In Tom Barry's book Guerrilla Days in Ireland, written in 1949, he gives a first-hand account on the Essex's collision with his flying column. Turkey. At the conclusion of the First World War, Britain maintained a garrison at Constantinople to ensure the free passage of the sea lanes between the Aegean and Black Seas. The dissolution of the Ottoman Empire and its transformation into the Turkish Republic coincided with the rise of Greek nationalism, resulting in the Greco-Turkish War. British Prime Minister David Lloyd George increased the size of the British garrison, which included the 2nd Battalion of the Essex Regiment. The garrison was withdrawn in 1923. Saar plebiscite. As part of the Treaty of Versailles, the Saarland province, on the border of France and Germany, was put under French control. In 1935, by the terms of the treaty, the people of the Saarland were to determine whether to remain as part of France, or to become German. The British government sent the 13th Brigade, which comprised 1st Battalion, the Essex Regiment, 1st Battalion, the East Lancashire Regiment, and the 16th, 5th Lancers, as a supervisory force to the Saarland. The result of the plebiscite was 90.3% voting to join Germany. Palestine. From Germany, the 1st Battalion moved to Catterick in 1935, and thence to Palestine in 1936, where it took part in putting down an Arab revolt. India. The 2nd Battalion spent the 13-year period from 1922 to 1935 as part of the British garrison in India. During this lengthy time, the 2nd Battalion was stationed at Ambala, Landi Kotal, now Sharat Nasirabad and Bombay. The 2nd Battalion spent an additional year overseas in Sudan, before returning to Britain and the regimental depot at Worley near Brentwood in Essex. Between the wars, in 1920, when the territorial force was reformed, the Essex Regiment again had 5 territorial battalions. However, this was short-lived, as the 8th Battalion was soon disbanded. On 15 December 1935, the 7th Battalion was converted into the 59th Anti-Aircraft Brigade, Royal Artillery, which was retitled as an AA Regiment on 1 January 1939 and as a HA Regiment on 1 June 1940. On 1 November 1938, the 6th Battalion duplicated, forming the 1st, 6th and 2nd, 6th Battalions, both of which were equipped with searchlights. On 1 August 1940, both battalions were transferred to the Royal Artillery, becoming the 64th and 65th Searchlight Regiments, Royal Artillery.